Welcome back to part 2 of The Real Story with Ted Dabrowski in the hot seat here in my studio. Thank you for coming in today, Ted. I appreciate it. So part 2 is all about these student scores that just came out. And of course, the Chicago Tribune headline about the new scores that came out says 2022 Illinois report card, wins for graduation rates and students' academic growth, but chronic absenteeism continues. Their first line in their article says this year marks the first complete Illinois report card since 2019. The Illinois State Board of Education released the latest report card for the state Thursday morning. Well, we're recording this on Thursday morning. I haven't had a chance to read the entire report card. It is up on their website. You have done already some preliminary work on this. You've been actually the biggest voice for what's going on in terms of education here in the state of Illinois. We've had you out for a town hall about this. This is actually in your wheelhouse. This is really what you're an expert at, in my opinion, is all the education statistics, wealth of knowledge. We welcome you to the program to discuss this report and actually the report that you guys did.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yes, the 2022 came out, and I want to tell you some things about that. Some things don't make sense at all. Some things are obvious, typical spin. But before we talk about the 2022, yesterday and day before, we put out the 2021 versus 2019 numbers because we didn't want people to forget what 2021 looked like, because 2022 is going to try to spin its way out of what's really happening. So can I give you 3 stats on that?
Absolutely, and as we screen share my screen, I do have your report, your Illinois 2021 student outcomes collapsed during school shutdowns. This is the report that you're referring to,
That's
correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to actually share some of your information right here on the screen so viewers can read it.
Okay.
Okay, along with you.
So
okay,
here's
great.
3 numbers that people should know about 2021, and this is after the biggest, most draconian COVID mitigations probably in the country. We're right up there, right?
Yes.
Our school shutdowns.
Definitely.
I'll give you an example. The analysis was done of which schools were open for how long, state by state. Our kids were in class 37% of the time during COVID. Compare that to Florida, which was in school 96% of the time.
Okay, COVID being what period, from when to when?
Yeah, that would be, I can't remember the precise dates, but...
Sort of like March of 2020 through what, maybe
sometime
March
in 2021.
of 2021. Okay,
right.
Okay.
So those numbers have been recorded, and we were 43rd.
43rd out of 50.
Out of 50, right. So we're bad at we didn't keep our kids in school. We all know that.
Right.
All right, so with that in mind, I want you to know where we ended up in 2021. So you have to remember 3 numbers, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
1 out of every 10 blacks in Illinois could read at grade level. 1 out of every 10. 2 out of every 10 Hispanic kids could read at grade level. And 3 out of every 10 kids in Illinois could read at grade level. That's how pathetic we were. 1 out of 10 for blacks, 2 out of 10 for Hispanics, and overall 3 out of 10. Why do we have a public school system if that's what we're getting out of it? Especially when you think about the minorities, right? 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10.
Especially when you think about the money being spent.
Well, and that's
as well.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's tragic on a personal level. It's tragic on a taxpayer level. It's tragic too.
Well, it is, because we could take that money and even less of it, and do something better.
Yes.
But the point is that it was disastrous for our kids. Now, the other point, though, is that 2021 was horrible, but that doesn't mean that 2019 was good. No, 2019 was horrific. Yeah. And so there's 2 different things to discuss here. Education is really bad. It doesn't matter if it's pre-COVID or post-COVID. And the other part is that those mitigations were authoritarian and really bad for people, and they made things worse.
Well, and unscientific.
And we've discussed about COVID stuff.
I mean, unscientific. Everybody knew that there's virtually no harm to kids from COVID. Everybody knew this. Everybody knew this early on.
Early on, but we knew early on.
We knew early on this was going to be a disaster, and nobody did anything to stop it. Mm-hmm. At least not in this state.
Yeah, we knew if you were comorbid, we knew if you were elderly, you were in trouble. But we also knew, all the data, if you're a kid, you were not at risk, right? And we know that by the numbers, and they're very clear.
Well, and I live right next to an elementary school here, and you can't make it up. They're out there in gym class, running around the field to get some fresh air and exercise with a mask on.
Outside.
Does anybody believe that that did anything? No, nothing.
Right. And
These people look foolish, and they're the ones teaching our children.
Right. And so, they were so worried about kids. But when you look at what these results mean, when you talk about first and second graders during COVID who weren't in school,
right?
Now they're third graders.
Yeah.
And, if you can't read in third grade, then you're in big, big trouble when it comes to doing, science and history and all those things, because you need to be able to read. So what did we do to those kids? That's a big question.
I don't know, but moving on, he goes, the Tribune report says the number of students who saw academic growth in English language arts, and this is from 2021 to 2022, in English language arts in grades 4 through 8 in 2022 increased by 52% from 50% in 2019. That's a growth rate. That's not a percentage that can read and do math at grade level. That's a growth rate. And by the way, the lower you were before,
there you go.
How easy it is to see a higher growth rate because you were so low before. Come on. All right. And in math, they saw an increase of 54% in 2022 from 50% in 2019. Growth measures how much a student progresses in 1 year compared with other students in their same grade statewide who started at the same baseline. Well, when the baseline's pretty low, it's pretty easy to show growth. The information is culled from the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, or IAR, the state's federally mandated measurement of students' mastery in English learning standards in language and math. ISB officials said that while growth slowed during the height of the pandemic, the improvement over pre-pandemic growth levels is evidence the state is on the right track in recovery efforts. I don't agree.
It's the biggest spin.
Okay.
It's the biggest spin.
Tell me more.
Right. So what they're not telling you is what the outright levels of reading and outright levels of math are. And so here's the tricky part. We've run the numbers, and we've reached out to ISB. So overall, it shows that there's a slight decrease in reading levels compared to 2021. So overall, the data says it's worse. Now, when you break it out into black, white, Hispanic, then it says it's better. So there's a big discrepancy because the pieces don't equal the sum. So we've reached out to ISB because we can't either something's wrong, they've made a mistake, we don't know, or I don't think we've made a mistake. We've checked the numbers; it's their numbers.
Right.
But so then they have to go to spinning to get something. One of the big spins, of course, is graduation rate, record graduation rates. Well, let's be clear about that. Graduation is not some very hard, firm number.
Right.
They can be whatever they want it to be. If they want to graduate more people tomorrow, they can. So that's a horrible metric. So it's really having to spin growth rates and things like that.
On that note, this Tribune article says that Illinois' 4-year high school graduation rate saw the highest number in 12 years, 87.3%, driven by gains for Black and Hispanic students. It's the highest rate since the Illinois State Board of Education began reporting the graduation rate in 2011.
Jeannie,
but
Jeannie, put those graduation numbers against what I just mentioned. 1 out of 10 Blacks can read at grade level. 2 out of 10 Hispanics can read at grade level. And 3 out of every 10 kids overall can read at grade level. How do you have record graduation rates when the kids can't read? And that's it.
You know how you can do it? You're just simply passing kids along grade to grade to grade, and that is a detriment to all of society.
And how the media doesn't hold Pritzker to the fire on that.
How the Tribune writes an article like this, wins for graduation rates and students' academic growth. How can they write such a dishonest headline?
Well, square it up, right? Make the numbers match, and they don't. They don't care, they don't want to go against the system.
Good grief. I mean, and the problem here is that if you're not going to tell the truth about what's going on, you're never going to get to the right solutions to solve this problem. And, part of what they say, here they go on. You tell me, Ted, you've been at this a long time. Growth is highly responsive to factors like quality teaching, evidence-based interventions, and school improvement efforts without actually identifying school improvement efforts. I don't know what that means. Does that mean SEL?
I think it's more
money.
Does
that mean, I think it means more money. Does that mean that they upgraded every facility that actually doesn't lead to growth? I mean, what does that mean? And then they say accelerated growth reflects the investments in schools. What does that mean? Is that teacher salaries? Is that more administrators? I'm going to get to that. Investments in schools, districts, and the state made to get students back on school. So they invested in districts. What is it, an investment in districts versus an investment in schools? This is gobbledygook. This is crap. I mean, quality teaching. Now, you did a seminal report on this as well, saying that you literally, you have failing schools and you have every single teacher in that school rated highly effective.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right. So to finish your first point, when you can't talk about the actual results, like reading and math, then you have to start moving into these soft, squishy things that nobody understands.
So you talk about the inputs instead of the outputs.
Yeah, and they're Orwellian, right? They sound
right.
So that's number one. That's why they're there, and that's why the Tribune's carrying the water for this failure.
They sure are,
and it's really sad. They shouldn't be doing that. Now to the second point that you made. Not only are the results disastrous, right? The 1, 2, 3. But then you look at teacher evaluations, and some people say, oh, Ted, you're being anti-teacher. I'm not being anti-teacher for a minute. I'm talking about a system. And here's what the system does. Teacher evaluations across the entire state, and I just mentioned those results, 97% last year, well, I guess 2 years ago, 97% of all teachers were either proficient or excellent. And it went up in 2021 to 98%. And I forget the percentage now, but nearly 80% of all school districts had 100% of their teachers proficient or excellent.
80% of school districts had all teachers rated at 100% proficient or excellent.
Yeah. So they're doing a great job, and yet kids can't read. And so this is the big problem. We have to face up to it, and we will never fix it as long as we allow these games to be played. And that's why we're speaking up about it.
Well, okay, that's great. So, but Illinois is doing better than the rest of the states, aren't we?
Yeah, and that's the other one. People said, yeah, but how are we doing? I said, I don't care how we're doing, right? That's my first answer, because, if you ever...
Actually, to listeners, that's not true. We're not doing better than a lot of other states. And by the way, we're spending a lot more money than other states.
Yeah, we'll talk about Florida and Indiana.
Okay, great.
But the point is, when you're looking at, as a personal person looking at yourself and you want to be better, you don't compare yourself to other people. You say, how do I be better, right? And if we're doing better than others and we only have 1 out of 10 black children reading at grade level, should then we be satisfied that we're at the middle? Hell no, right? We got to look at what we're doing. So that's my first response is no, don't worry about other states. How are we doing for our children, for our workforce, for the safety of our cities, for the future of our state? And we're failing that. I mean, F. Now let's talk about compared to other states. Well, we're middling in some stuff, right? And yeah, right. You wouldn't expect us to maybe be that different overall. But we looked at not just that, but look at the money. And when you start adding money to it, Indiana and Florida have been doing as well or better than we do, but we spend 60 to 70% more than they do. So you have to start taking money into account. And when they're doing as well or better than we are, and yet we're spending far more than they are per student, then we have a big problem, which again leads back to property taxes, which is why some people are leaving the state. Right? So
absolutely.
we're finding ourselves in the same spot in many things. We're last or bottom in too many things.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this one. I mean, one of my favorites, right? Oh gosh, can I find him? Okay, Ralph Martiri. Just bemoaning the fact that I can't believe that someone who wants to be taken seriously as a candidate for governor could make such an outrageous claim on his plans to cut $10 to $15 billion from the state budget. He thinks it's going to go straight to education. I mean, but Martiri's always been one. He's a big, huge proponent of this evidence-based model of education. He still says we still need to spend an additional $3.5 billion more on top of what we've been spending. And Pritzker argues I've put billions of dollars more into education. Okay, well, Governor Pritzker, you're in your 4th year now. You've put billions more, and we know that you've put billions more in education. We've not gotten anything out of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's put billions more, and so did Rauner before him.
So did
right?
Rauner before
Rauner
him.
bought into this. Rauner bought into this. One
of
the biggest mistakes I think Illinois has made is this evidence-based funding formula. It's a huge mistake.
I voted against it. I like to remind people I voted against it.
It's throwing more and more money into a system that's failing, right? And so when we point out all these statistics, it's not because we want to be negative. we're just trying to be honest about how bad things are, and therefore that this whole thing needs to be unwound, and we need to move to a school choice type system because, yeah, we can put in billions more. Well, but until somebody says we're going to get something better out of it, then...
Well, let's talk about the NAEP scores, because at the same time that this report was coming out for Illinois scores, the NAEP, the National Assessment of Education Progress, that report that is done every year or every other year, okay, and they look at 4th and 8th grade reading and math scores, and they measure it across the states, and it's a standard test that everybody takes. It's really the nation's report card on education and education progress. So it's interesting because I got sent this by, believe it, my son. My son's deployed right now. He's in Sicily, but he had enough sense to send mom this telegram post. Thank you, Nick. And essentially at the bottom of it, if Catholic schools were a state, they'd be the highest performing one in the United States on all 4 NAEP tests. So Catholic schools that by far educate children for a lot less frills, a lot less money, performed better on these national tests than any other state. And when you rank us in the states, Illinois is just above the median, and we're ranked 20th in the nation in terms of NAEP scores. We go back and forth, though. We've been below the average, we've been above the average, whatever. What does this tell us? I
mean, we're talking about massive fall in NAEP scores.
Yeah, they fell scores, too. That's right.
Yeah, of 20-year fall. Right, we gave up 20 years of progress. On the SAT, they were saying 30 years. So massive drops. And it kind of speaks to, again, we're talking about the whole country went down. And a lot of that had to do with all the mitigations, right? So some were more extreme than others. We were at the extreme end. Others were less extreme on their mitigations. But what we do know is that Catholic schools fought to stay open. They fought to stay open. They didn't fall for it. I mean, obviously they weren't consistent across the board, but they knew that their goal was to stay open if they could. And I think that's the big message, is that when given a choice, people could have found schools that were open as opposed to the people in CPS who were stuck.
So even here locally, you had Catholic schools at the elementary level, and our local school was open as well for elementary K through 5th grade, but middle school wasn't. It was remote, but not Catholic school middle schools. They were open, and Catholic high schools were open more so than public high schools, which basically went full remote. So they did stay open a lot longer and made an impact for sure, no doubt. But I think it's also interesting because Catholic schools provide a level of competition, and there's a lot of Catholic schools in the state of Illinois. I think that actually allows, that forces our public schools to be better.
Well, you're absolutely right about the competition. Parents are taking money out of their pocketbook to pay for the schools. And so the Catholic schools, one, know they need to be open. Two, they know they need to add value when it comes to reading and math and things like that. So they have a little less time for all the new things that are going on in the public schools, all the critical race theory and things like that. So it's just another system, and we need to have lots of different competing school models so that people can choose. But the Catholic schools would be one of them, and they kind of proved that one survived better in a COVID environment than the public schools, which were a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to shut them down, not good.
So, Ted, let's just kind of wrap up this conversation. It's really been good, but so the Illinois report card comes out today.
Yep.
Fully. It's online. I haven't looked at it. It's not into the individual school's report card. I just looked at my own. It's not there yet. What do you expect to find? What are you going to be doing in the next few weeks when it comes to this?
Well, we're reviewing it right now. We hope to put out something today or tomorrow.
Okay.
We wanted clarification from ISB before we hit them on that point that the numbers don't make sense. So either there's games playing, something's wrong, I don't know.
And again, that's because you looked at the English language arts scores, and overall, ISB data shows a decline in scores.
Small decline.
But in every one of the demographic areas, Black, White, Hispanic, other,
they're up.
They're up. So that doesn't make sense.
You can't have the whole be different than some of the parts.
Right.
So there's a problem there. But we're going to focus on the spin. I think they've said that it's not better than 2019, right? So. But do they hedge themselves a little bit? It's all spin, and we're going to call it out and keep putting pressure because that's what this needs.
Well, and I think that we need a lot more attention on. You can't have 10% of the people not at grade level and have an 80% graduation rate. I think that really needs to be a pressure point going forward, and I don't think we've talked about it enough.
Jeannie, I came here and I think we spoke about the Decatur results a while back.
Yes.
So let me tell you how bad it is for Decatur, because nobody's fighting for the Decatur students, and I'm using them as an example. Before COVID, on average, 12 out of every 100 kids could read at grade level. 12 out of 100 of all kids, black, white, Hispanic. Just 12 out of 100, every 100. After 2021, it was 5.6 kids. So here you've got an 8,400 school district, and only 5.6% of the kids can read at grade level across the whole system. How does anybody support that? Why isn't Governor Pritzker there demanding answers right now? And of course, I'm being hypothetical.
Well,
why isn't anybody demanding? Where's the
minute.
Tribune? Where are the newspapers? Where are the legislators? Where are they?
Well, we know what the Wall Street Journal said when you gave them the information. They said why the entire school district administration isn't fired.
Yeah.
Right now is beyond us. That's what the Wall Street Journal said about Decatur when you gave them that information.
And what did Pritzker call wire points for that information, which is public information? It's the ISB information. It's his own information.
I forgot what he called you.
He called us a right-wing carnival barker organization.
Oh, carnival barkers,
right?
yes.
And that's what Governor Pritzker, if you want to see Governor Pritzker at his best, he's name-calling rather than defending the Decatur students that we're trying to defend. Right? Something needs to be done about schools like, it's not just Decatur, right? It's Rockford, Mount Vernon, Elgin, Waukegan. It's the same story, just different levels of pain.
Same story.
Nowhere is he there to defend them.
Oh, and just to put a data point on it, like I've gone to my school board meetings, I know you have too, to watch these hyper-educated elitists sit there and think that just because they have a PhD and I don't know, whatever educational doctorate you want to get it in, and think that they know best. Meanwhile, they're failing the kids, and they just sit there and give you pablum. It's just shocking. It's shocking. We need to demand real results. They are destroying kids' lives.
We're beyond results. We need to demand, and every Illinoisan needs to demand school choice.
Absolutely,
that's really it. Because I don't think this system can be fixed until it's broken.
That is the answer. And school choice, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean that your public school may go away. Maybe your public school is doing better than anybody else.
I think they'll do a lot better because they have to step up. They don't have to step up right now. They can be comfortable.
Yeah. Well, always a great conversation on this topic with Ted Dabrowski. Thank you so
Jeannie.
much for joining me on The Real Story.
Thank you.